different LEDs on here, and they're just kind of slowly changing. One comes on, one comes off. You know, it's kind of a slow pace. We could sit here all night watching this very slowly go, but you know, if you actually had these in windows in your different buildings, or even one in each different building, it doesn't even have to be windows in the same building, then you'd want it to go this slow or maybe even slower. And that's about the only thing I'm going to have to show you in the sketch. So we're going to go back to that real quick. Actually, let's build this thing first. So I just put it together so that you could see what we're going to end up doing. And what I'm going to do is just unplug my Arduino and tear this thing apart real quick.
Howdy, 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 everybody. Okay, now we're up there. Looks like we got a bunch of people already jumping in here. Got Big John, JC's Rep Track. Hey, Wilmer. Ari, Steve, how you doing? Hastings, BNSF is here. Let's see, we got a few more in there, I think. Let me kind of scroll back up here and see. Dwight, how you doing? Alright, that's about it. Yeah, we got a few here on the panel. We got Hot Rod Rodney, how you doing?
Fine.
Yeah, that's good.
Just fine.
Got Mr. Big Bill.
Hello and everybody, good evening.
Yeah, we also got Josh over here as a guest. He's still trying to figure out his computer and what browser to use, so. Dave, he just popped in, and Michael.
Yeah, I won't have a chat, so.
Yeah.
And Crawford just came back in, ladies and gentlemen.
Howdy, gentlemen.
Well, we've had a busy week this week. It shows Tuesday, Wednesday, and tonight. Keeping me busy anyway.
We had the trifecta.
The KRP Models, how you doing? He's just popped in. And Bill Wilmer said, Bill, it's a go on your question to me the other day.
Yes, I see that. I got my phone on. Very good. Very good. I'll be in touch later, and we will definitely set up some sort of a date time. I think we already did. But let's keep it on the QT. It's a secret.
Yeah. Well,
you know how you keep a secret among 3 people?
I think you have to kill one of them, right?
Yeah, 2 of them.
Oh, that's right. That's the ticket.
I was going to say, just don't tell the other 2.
Yeah, well, I'm from New York. You know, we take things to the extreme.
Mr. John D just popped in.
John Gilly. John got yesterday. John had a video and mail call, and I sent him a T-shirt, and I hope it fits, John. Hope it fits.
Well, I'm glad to see Wilmer liked Andy's show Tuesday night.
It was a lively bunch of fellas on Tuesday night. I'll grant you that.
I think it was a very, what do you call it? I think it was a very informative show.
We had a good time. I think we had a good time. I had a good time. So,
but I think it was good. I mean, you had everybody. I mean, there was Miles making a tree.
yeah, that was some kind of tree, right?
That was some kind of tree.
Listen, people like to laugh at me for the crazy stuff, the crazy trees I build. Miles has got some pine trees that are 3 feet tall or something like that. He has a road case so he can take them to shows. So if you guys think I'm some kind of extreme at any of that stuff.
Yeah. And then you had your, like, wood chip build thing on.
You know, I made a little progress with that. Joe G got to, you know, paint around and mess with his stuff too, and he, you know, we got hung out maybe a couple hours or something before the show started, and when he got here, then you know a little bit afterwards, he shot a little video while he was here, but he was set up. He got to I had an extra workstation set up for him. He kind of played around.
Did he bring candy?
Yeah, I think what we do. No, he did not. He did not bring candy. I'm upset about that now that you mentioned it.
He brought candy for my wife, but it was Christmas Eve. In all fairness, it was Christmas Eve.
Well, that's a smart man. Bring your wife candy.
No, she brought him candy.
No, she didn't. He came up with a box can. I was very impressed with that, you know. But again, like I said, it was Christmas Eve, so you know, Joe G, the 2, he's known as Joe G 2. He, you know, he brought it up, you know.
He's got to be Joe G something because I can't pronounce that name. So.
Well, he good old Italian boy.
Yeah, you New Yorkers can say that stuff right off the top of your head. With enough practice, I probably could too. But
yeah, it's all in that. Well, you imagine my wife's maiden name is Canavelli. Canavelli.
I love that name. The fact that you used it on your layout's interesting. But that's just a cool name. Of course, it sounds like a name I would have seen on The Sopranos, but it's still a cool name.
Well, where do you think they got the show idea from?
I was sure Big Bill was a consultant on that.
If they got the idea from my Canavelli Pasta Factory, I'd be rolling in the dough right now.
No doubt.
John Tilly, what does it mean when you say hit the thumbs up? Hit the thumbs up for who?
I don't know if you can do that or not in the chat, can you?
Not in the chat. You can on the video itself, but.
Yeah.
I think we got a sparse crowd tonight because Steve Brown is having his show live. Look who's here. The one, the only, Sam Cool.
Hey.
What's up, Sam?
You know, Sam, I got to tell you something, Sam, in all seriousness. When I grow up, I want to be just like you, brother.
I appreciate that.
Hey.
Thank you.
So did I, Sam.
When you got it going, you got it going, man. What can I tell you?
So what's new with you guys?
What's new? Well, we John just got finished explaining that we had a trifecta this week of shows. We had my show on Tuesday. No, we had Fine Scale show on Tuesday. We had my show yesterday with Steve Atwell from Midwest Model Hobby Shop. And we have the Thursday night chat with John here, Johnny's Train Talk Show.
Steve Atwell was an interesting conversation. He's an interesting guy. I got to meet him in person out in Kansas City. Go out by his. I got to operate on I guess his father's layout. Him and his father's layout, in-scale layout. But I was surprised how much in-scale. That was my first experience in a decade or more running in-scale trains. I'm surprised how well they perform these days. His was well put together, executed, and operated quite well. And boy, he does have a really nice outfit there. He is well stocked, and he's got a really nice, as a hobby shop, he's got a really nice little hobby shop.
Well, you and John were out there, right, in back for the National Model Railroaders Convention? Yeah,
for National Kansas City. And he's, I don't know, not very far down the road from where we were, so a few miles. So we went down there was a pretty decent-sized crew of us that went down, and
yeah,
we were all several of us operated.
Yeah, it was Marty.
DeBob.
Yeah, DeBob. We also had
Ron's Trades.
Yeah, Ron, and we had Jim Red Eye.
Yep.
Cool. We had for you guys that watched the show last night, after we went off air, we had a kind of like after show, end of show discussion, and Steve had put a poll out on his Facebook page, Midwest Modelers, and asked the ages of everybody, broke it down to 17 to 20, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and then 60 plus and 70 plus. And it was pretty interesting. You had a lot of guys, in the mid-range of the 40-year-olds and late 30s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people tell them that the hobby is got old people in it, it kind of disputes that.
If you've been to the conventions, and especially the Fine Scale show that Johnny and Chris Rood went to year before last or whatever, or the RPM shows especially, the audience you see, of course you see a spectrum of age groups, but the largest audience that I seem to see is that 40, around the 40 range. That's when people tend to get back into the hobby, it seems like. I mean, you're settled down, you've got, just possibly enough disposable income that you could pursue something like this.
Well, it's true. I know for me, once I retired, it was, basically, what am I going to do? I had things to do and, projects on hand, but, for a hobby. So, deciding to get back into the model railroading hobby was a no-brainer, But, it helps, because you got a lot more time on your hands, My two biggest decisions in life are now reading the paper flat and having my coffee in a porcelain mug instead of a paper cup. And having good coffee. I used to drink the swill of the swill. But now, I like to have good coffee. In fact, when I go visit the guys back at the crew room at the job, they offer me, coffee, and I'm like, no, thank you, but no thank you. It's free. It's like mud. When you pour it out, it's like mud. But when you're working the overnight, that's what you want to drink, is that mud.
Coffee as a...
Hold on the phone here for a minute. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. Yeah, sure. I'll have some. My wife just came home, so she's gonna make put on the pot for a bit of tea. Bit of tea, as my grandmother used to say. Bit of tea.
Well, during the Tuesday Fine Scale show, there's something brought up, and I figured I'd just bring it back up again tonight as a topic. And that was the doing detailing in buildings. Why would you do it? How much of it should you do?
Well, I'm real excited about doing some interiors. Go ahead, Bill. Let's get your take.
No. I just, it depends on what you're. I think it depends on the realism you want to portray, in the layout, and what you want to showcase the most. Some guys, there was a perfect model. There was a guy who was a model. I know Miles Hale said that he never put backs on his buildings. He never put backs on his buildings. So, again, it's what you deemed.
You're okay.
Important.
You're still up.
What you deem. Who?
You. Your camera flashed, but it's back.
I didn't mean to flash.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can pass.
I think Miles has a good approach to that. If you can't see it, why model it? What'd your wife say, Bill?
She says to say hello to John.
Hey, Georgianne.
John says hello.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you.
This is Thursday night chat, boys.
Yeah.
Back to the subject, but it all depends on what you're modeling. Like Lionel, they had those. The 1950s good point is the trolleys where they just did the shadows.
Josh.
What?
Inside voice, you're killing my audio over here.
Sorry. But it all depends if it's a main building that you're going to photograph or you're going to model, and it depends on what your skill level and what you want to model. You could have a picture in the background and in the building, and then just model the detail in the front, or just picture in there. And it depends on the distance. And like the control tower on a railroad, I would say, like the interlocking tower, I would say detail the interior. Definitely that, because people will be looking at it, and definitely in pictures. It just all depends on where the building's on the layout.
My instinct about every choice you make on a layout about how high detail it is, how good of trees you need to make, fine scale craftsman kits, interiors, not interiors, separate grab irons or not. My biggest two controlling factors is what's your goal and ambition? What do you care about? Number one. And then another one that seems to not be mentioned as much is layout height. So, I mean, if your layout height is down at 42, 44 inches, it's designed for easy reachability for operation and such, and especially if you're designing a layout more for operation or for operational value, you don't need to detail on it to meet that role-playing game aesthetic of operation, then skip those things. And I feel the same way about puffball trees. By all means, puffball trees look fine if you're looking down on them from the top in that aircraft or helicopter style effect. But if your layout is like a lot of modern layouts, these shelf style layouts that are quite narrow and quite up at eye level, the more detail is required. I like Miles's approach that Bill was saying. If you can't see it, why model it? Why model the back of a building if you can't see it? Why model the interior if you can't get to where you can see it? But if you can see that all your DPM structures down the city street or whatever are all just vacant inside, you either need to find a reason to justify why the town is so or you at least need some paper inside.
Yeah, and it's also
Josh.
Sorry.
Lower. Thank you.
Sorry. it's also, you're trying to, as a model railroader, or I'm actually a photographer as well, you're trying to also tell a story with the people. So if the detail in the buildings play in your story, or if you're a ribbon counter like Andy, do what you want to do. And if you want to put your people in places that'll tell a story.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great idea. I love telling stories on my railroad. I think every railroad should have a story to it.
There's actually a photographer that put out. He's a modeler as well, and he put out a YouTube video. I'll have to find it, later. But it's on YouTube, and that's what he talks about. Is how his layout tells a story.
Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out where Josh's whisper mode switch is. He's got everybody turn their
headphones on.
Yeah, he's got everybody turn their headphones down.
That's all right. Sometimes we need a little wake-up call.
Let's see. Let me get back up here real quick because somebody made a good comment. Stu, structures. I think buildings in the foreground that can be easily seen for the detail are a wonderful thing to do and really add a lot of good interest. I guess this is Joe, Joelle. I'm a scratch builder, so sometimes it takes a little figuring to do little details. And we get down here and Jaffa, if I'm putting in lights or if there are large doors or windows as much as possible, after all, the devil is in the details.
Speaking of details.
Hey, Ralph.
Hey, Bill. I got a question for everybody. Not everybody's a prototype modeler, but if you are modeling to some sort of prototype, as Lionel would say, what side of the tracks are you modeling? Let's say you have an east-west line.
Right.
West being on the left, so I'm looking north. And along that line is a station or a building which is prototypical, but it's on the south side of the tracks. Most of the detail on the building is on the front of it, which faces the tracks. How do you model it? On the south side or on the north side? Do you want to see the detail? Do you give up a little bit of, what do they call it?
Please.
Fidelity.
Yeah, to make it so that you can see the front by putting it on the other side of the tracks?
Or probably accuracy. Accuracy is the better word. Trade accuracy.
Okay. So there's my question. How do you model it?
So I have two.
And it goes for more than just a station. Any building.
Right. I have that same compromise. I wanted to model all these city structures I've been working on along what they call the western front of St. Paul. And one of the ways that I didn't compromise on it, it is on the correct side where it is. You are largely seeing the back side of the buildings, and in some cases the inside of the buildings cut to the fascia to make that interesting. What I've done is shifted the track work and stuff in such a way as that it's running diagonally, which is true of all of my layout. The track work is never parallel to the fascia or the backdrop for any period of time whatsoever, except for this 4-foot section where there's a bunch of turnouts. That's the only section on the entirety of the layout, top 2 levels and all, where the track would be parallel to the front or the back for any stretch, period. And if I was redoing this, because these were the first 2 modules I built, this wouldn't even be parallel. I feel like it's a mistake, but so in the town, it's all shifted at quite a bit of an angle, as much of an angle as I could get in a 2-foot depth. I went as close to the back as I could still see it, so I went 6 inches from the back. That's, by default, to never go closer than, say, 4 inches. So it goes all the way to the back before it gets onto that section, and then it comes all the way back to the front, as far to the front as I could swing it. So it's at an angle in such a way as that you could look up the city street and see the fronts of the building. that allowed me to have that detail. So it's one way to solve that problem. But if I really cared about it, I would trade the accuracy and flop a building over. So far, I have yet to make that. I've made compromises. I've yet to make that particular compromise. Every turnout is in the correct direction, and every building is on the correct side so far.
So far. And most prototype guys that I've talked to won't go to that detail. They'll put it where it belongs.
That's what I do. I put it where it belongs. So far, I've yet to make that compromise. I might be willing to make that compromise given the right trade-off. I'm not sure, because I have made compromises that 3 years ago when I started this that I didn't think I would make. I have made some compromises. I mean, especially with the methods in which I employ to build it. My initial plan was to scratch build everything, etc. So some compromises, but none of it in the way of location to turnout to trackage. It's all track to track accurate to the layout. Every track's there, turnout's in the correct direction.
I can see if you have a layout that can be viewed from all sides, then it really doesn't matter. But if you have a shelf layout around a wall, like mine, like yours, you're limited. If you want to stick to prototypical, you're limited to what you can do.
But you can manipulate the viewing angles. So what I've done on mine is I manipulate the viewing angles.
In 2 feet, you can't manipulate it that much.
No, it's a subtle and subjective manipulation, but I do things to block the viewer, to force a person. Well, that's not the best view, so they move down a little further. So I force people into certain views. So like this section that's out here at the front, it's because you need to get access to it that's at the front. As soon as you get to about right here, the track is diving toward the back and there's trees all in front. So it's not a natural spot to stay in. It's a natural spot to walk with your train and watch it through the trees. I love that view. But that forces people to probably not stay to try to work with their train at that location because it's not easy access. I've done that to force people subconsciously maybe or whatever. I do the same thing in the town section. It forces people into certain areas. Partly I did that because of the multi-deck consideration of the layout. I've offset, so if there's something interesting going to be something interesting on the top deck, I forced the viewer not to stand there on the bottom deck or encouraged them not to the viewing angle and vice versa. But yeah, you only have so much room with 2 feet, and I wish I'd made it a little narrower. But just shifting the track work back and forth give you different angles.
Then the issue comes up. Okay, so you're building a layout for to be prototypical, but are you doing it to run trains, or are you doing it to facilitate operations? And if you're doing it to facilitate operations, and the warehouse or factory that you're picking up and delivering to is on the wrong side of the track so that you can't manipulate in behind a building to get the car unhooked, that sort of thing, do you switch it around again?
Possibly.
I have a situation like that when I go into the closet. See, everything is, you have to walk along. It's the same, it's an 11-inch.
Are you saying you've come out of the closet?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
This is 2019, brother. I identify as a blonde Chinese woman, so and there's nobody can say anything. That's the way it is. But you know, the Brooklyn Lollipop Company is right there, and then there's 2 tracks that go behind it.
Yep.
So you have to allow for, you have to allow for this. You know, it can hold up to 4 storage, tanker cars, but then you have to be realistic and say no one's going to see those 4 cars on the layout.
Mm-hmm.
And the operator that's operating with it, that has that section is going to know it, but no one else is going to know it. So there is a bit of a compromise. You say, okay, 2, and spot the car on the outside and pretend that you pushed it into the back.
Right.
So I think it's a give and take, right? It's a very valid and good question. It really is, but I think there's a point. I think in every model railroad, I think there's some sort of a compromise that we all have to come to. We'd all like it to be this way, but again.
Except for Andy, he just changes the angle of the track.
Oh, well, I do create a bunch of different creative solutions. A lot of those, like in the town section, I needed to be able. There's a track almost immediately along the backdrop with the buildings back there. It's reasonably hard to reach, so I built an 8-inch floor height. So in that wood section of the town, where everything else is quite literally at my eye level, you step up 7 inches, whatever, and you've got more room to reach back there. But you get creative about solutions. I positioned no building so it would be easy to reach in. Actually, I twisted the track work so it's easy to reach in at the spot where the track diverges from the main line. And you can do things like delayed uncoupling, where you set the couplers and then re-bump them into each other to push the cars into position. Things like that work real well. And if you don't mind the little trip pins that hang down, I despise them. I cut them off to KD's chagrin. Miles said they spent a whole lot of time working on that design for being able to remote uncouple, and a lot of us cut them off. But if you do that, and you put magnets or electromagnets or those Rapido electromagnet systems under the track. In my case, because I use different couplers, I just delayed a couple if I needed to.
So there's stew structures. I like realism, but sometimes getting the flavor over correctness, and sometimes takes a greater need.
This is true. This is very true.
I consider that with scale proportion too. Like we talked about ballast tremendously, to the point that Jimmy gave us all homework to go grab a ballast stone off the railroad and not get arrested while doing so. And then we biked ballast and talked about ballast scale. And my ballast is overscaled, but it does not look right. The whole idea is kind of a Walt Disney-esque concept. It has to look right to the eye. So scale is important. Sometimes you manipulate scale. The perfectly to scale, it doesn't always correlate correctly. It may be the exact scale of what the prototype was, but it won't feel correct to you when you're standing in the spot, given the environment that you're viewing it in. So my ballast is slightly overscaled to make it a convincing effect.
I've had some guys actually change the east-west to accommodate the facilities on the proper side.
Sure.
So for viewing. So the west then would be on the right and not on the left.
I can't do that. I can't make that compromise. It's because, well, okay. So this is the trade-off that I think a lot of us that are persnickety about our layout designs get. But there's two types of kind of persnickety layouts being built. Those that are of craftsman construction, the Jimmy Dignan style layouts, and some of those layouts that have craftsman structures and hours and hours and hours, tens of hundreds of hours committed to individual structures of the layout, and they just run trains in circles. The trains are a scenic element as a component to the other scenery that they like to build. Lex Parker is another example. One of my favorite layouts there is, and it is just a loop of track effectively. And he doesn't operate it. He runs trains, and he's a builder. He likes to build. He builds this great stuff, and he's wonderful. On the other hand, you have operators. Those operators tend, not always, but tend to build layouts that are much closer to a board game. It's a role-playing game. It's much closer to Monopoly, and they will make compromises like Caboose Industry ground throws that are twice the size, that are 3 times the size of the prototyper, various other things to accommodate, one-to-one size hands and operators that will knock stuff over. And they'll make all the trade-offs in the world so that it's an enjoyable game to play. What I wanted was the balance between those. I wanted to merge those two compromises. I wanted a fine-scale quality layout that could be operated by me and visitors. And that's a balance that I have to weave together. And sometimes I have to compromise the fine scale on it. And sometimes I have to make the operations a little more complicated and tricky to get around the cosmetics. So kind of weave myself down that line. Okay. And I'm not sure I pulled it off. I'm not sure yet. It's an unknown how effective I've been at it and whether the compromises are right, but it's styrofoam. I'll cut it out and change it if I need to. It's a module. I'll pull a module down and redo it if it doesn't work. I mean, this is a big experiment. I mean, everything I've done is an experiment. I didn't do anything in a traditional way pretty much, and I still don't know if it'll work. 3 years in, and it could be all a waste of time because I'm just not sure. But I took a wild approach to it, in my opinion, but the way I approach everything in life, a physics approach called first principles. What's the minimum required element that I need to make it look the way I want, and what does it take to get there, regardless of how anybody else does it. Didn't care how anybody else did it. What would it take to get something that looked like this and allowed the running of trades like this? And that's why I built it the way I did.
I see, like, I feel like a whole layout is like a show, a performance. In the locomotives and the freight cars are the actors.
The actors.
And the layout itself is the stage and the set. And not to say that the set isn't important, because without the set, there's just actors, and they can't do what they do without the set. So I think both are equally important. You have to have, not have to, but to have a good performance, you should have the best of both worlds.
Well, there's a balance that I think has been described. So first, the stage and actor thing was first said in model railroading by Frank. What's his last name? Somebody, I can't remember for a second. Late 1930s, late 1930s, early 1940s. Model railroad builder from MR, in those early MR magazines, Frank. And
Frankie Rice Bowl?
I don't think so in this case. I wouldn't want to condemn Frankie Rice Balls, though. No hard feelings or bad things to say about that fella. He's a fine gentleman.
Frankie Tomato.
But there's a famous model railroad. I just can't think of his name. One of the earlies, the Lynn Westcotts and those kind of guys. He was in that crew of people. Earlier than John Allen in all the MRs. Frank started with a Z or something like that. Whatever. He said
E-L-L-I. E-L-L-I.
Ellis. That's right. Frank Ellis. Yep. Frank Ellison. That's the name. I couldn't think of it for a minute. I've got some old white in hard.
You can thank Jerry Smith for that.
Thank you very much. I had a brain moment for a second. I knew exactly who I was thinking of, and I just couldn't put it together. He said that originally.
Jerry.
But one of my favorite concepts in the last few years that I've seen is from Joe Fugate. Joe Fugate says what matters most. He talks about it's not everybody talks about in operations is quantity of run, how much you've got, the length of the main line, and that matters. That was a controlling factor in my layout design as far as the crazy stuff I've had to do to make timetable and trade order work is to get a long enough mainline. But he says that's the wrong focus, and I don't disagree with him. He says quality of run is better than quantity of run, and that is no derailments, does it run well, prototypical speeds or slower, and that the stuff along the right-of-way is done correctly. So track, weathered track, painted track, etc., ballast, the details and crossing gates and the signals and the structures right along the right-of-way is most critical. And then he says, as soon as you get away from that, you can go to bare plywood and people will enjoy operating your layout. It's better if there's more there, but many people have operated on plywood Pacifics and had a great time doing so. But having some elements to make it you feel like you're in the kind of in the space of what you're doing would be better. So I do subscribe to that concept that the most important thing is quality of operation and enjoyment and uniqueness of operation. If everything's just plain Jane Coltrane's, mine's a lot of plain Jane Coltrane's, but some uniqueness of operation that gives it some disparity, and then a lot of focus on all I care about is what's along the track. Everything in the layout, everything else is a secondary compromise and building flats and all that other stuff. All that matters is if the track and right along the track is as good as it can be.
Okay.
Well, I like as much track as I can get in the space that I have.
But you have to make sure it's good track.
Oh yeah, I do.
All right, Tim, good deal.
So Gaffa says everybody who looks at a layout always tries to see in every nook and cranny to see the details. So detailing in the front is just as good as, it's major thing to your layout.
Yeah, but you can cheat.
Depends on who it is.
Yeah, but you can cheat. As you get further away from the eye, you can cheat.
Yes.
When it's right up in the front and center, like these structures I'm working along, they're on the front edge of the layout. I can't get away with a lot at all because it's, at eye level, and I can't cheat much. And the interiors need to be adequate, especially with the one that's open through the building to the front side. I'm not going to be able to cheat. Actually,
Well,
I'm going to buy out 100.
That's where I was going to go to, is your building, because even though you can't see the front, by having it situated properly and opening up the back, you now have the detail that's missing in the front, because now you see through to it and you see the interior. A lot of guys don't want to build the interior. I can understand that.
Oh, I like the interior stuff.
So do I.
Look what Lloyd's done with the interiors lately. I'd have to say Lloyd's inspired me on the interiors. Encouraged me to think outside of the box to doing these. He's done these crazy interiors here lately with that are just spectacular.
Joel mentions mirrors on parts of the layout really help with small layouts. That's true to a point. And if you want to get 100% out of your mirrors, the mirror part of it, the silver has to be on the front, not on the back. Because to try and deceive the eye, it needs to be right up tight to whatever it's against. Otherwise, you see that gap of glass between the article in front of it and the mirror, because the mirror is silvered on the back instead of on the front.
That's right. I forget what they call those, front loaded or something. But I think mirrors are a good effect. They can be a good effect. My opinion tends to fall into this when it comes to mirrors, and there's several other kind of out there kind of concepts in modern railroading that are a little unique. If they are done really, really well, they're awesome. Love them. Yes. I'm all about it. The moment that they're just not perfect, I mean, if they're good but not perfect, they're awful. Skip it. Don't do it. But if they're perfect, if you have a road that goes and turns in such a way that you can't get a direct view, so you don't have operators checking their hair or something in the mirror, if you can do it correctly, perfectly correctly, and hide every edge, it's a great effect. Otherwise, use a photo or something, because if it's not perfect, it's awful. In my personal experience and what I've seen.
Got to be a magician if you're going to use a mirror.
It's
got to hide the mirror, Yeah.
And I've seen some great concepts. I think Ralph was the one who told me about this, but a fellow who was taking the cars and chopping them in half and putting the fronts.
I was just going to say that. You take two fronts and glue them together, so you put it in front of a mirror. It looks like a car's coming at you, or like following behind, right? Two cars. And then do the same with the two rear ends.
Yep.
Just cut it in half. Glue two rear ends together. From the front, you can't tell there's another back on it, but in the mirror, you see the back of another car going away, just like yours is.
And because mirrors reverse the image, you've got to. There's a bunch of little tricks to get it right. I've thought about doing it in one place on my layout where you can't see trains. It'll just be the extension of a valley, and it works in some very vanilla kind of scenes that are not very specific. It's hard if you have tracks running up to it or near it or in a way that can be seen to it. And I've seen it done in container yards, and makes the container yard look pretty thick, deep. But you just about always end up seeing yourself in the mirror. And the point is, it's the Walt Disney concept again. If the illusion works, awesome. Soon as the illusion collapses, it's all over. That quick.
As soon as somebody points out that there's a mirror there, you're going to start seeing the mirrors everywhere they have them on the layout.
Yep. Yeah, it will become a treasure trove of what this guy didn't pull off as an effect. If you pull it off, now, by all means, give it a shot, but be wary of trying to pull it off, because a whole lot of spectacular modelers have tried and failed to pull that technique off and been pulling mirrors out before. But there's some really creative ideas. I've seen two front-facing mirrors put together like this on a road, so when you looked into it, the image was not reversed. That was a nice effect.
I've also seen guys use mirrors, and they put like the next scene in a big building. The back of the building's open, and what you're looking at down the mirror is actually inside the building. as a scene, as part of the distance scene, but that's probably pretty hard to pull off too, because you got to angle your mirror to be able to. You look down the road, and the scene continues on. And it's a different scene. There's different buildings in that scene than what's in the foreground. But what you're actually doing is you're looking at an image inside of a building.
Well, yeah, I've seen some great techniques there. Marty brings up an interesting point too. He said you can use these little small LCD TFTs for like shop interiors. He says let's get with the current technology. Small LCD TFT screens can be used with great result, much better than mirrors. For certain applications, that's unbeatable, and the technology's got so cheap. Marty was talking about something that has still got me enamored, and I've thought about it, talking about buying these cheap projectors. Recently over Christmas, they had these, they were really inexpensive. They were like $60, little gaming projectors. And he was talking with skies with them and stuff. Boy, you can do some amazing stuff with the technology if you're willing to put the work into that. But I think mirrors, crazy projectors, all of this other stuff that's beyond bench work, track, and trades requires you designing for that particular implementation. You've got to design around that consideration. And I haven't focused on that. If I could fit something crazy like that in, I designed a few crazy things, like the fog. I designed the valley, designed the scenery, designed the fascia to be quite high, purposely to capture fog, so that I could fog it up and you can see a train come through. That's a unique or novel concept that I designed specifically for. But it required one little element to make that work. Not like a mirror, where I would have had to massively design bench work around controlling where a user's viewing angle was from. So
I'm not sure what Sparky's saying here. He says two-way mirrors, more expensive. I don't know what a two-way mirror is in railroading.
Yeah, I don't know what you do unless you wanted to hide operators or something like a runway operator behind the scene at a yard. Yeah, I thought Marty had been. Marty said he's been experimenting with the projectors for animated backdrops on the layout. I'm fascinated by that concept of seeing cars go by on roads off in the distance, or even birds fly by.
The two-way mirror concept. The observer side of the mirror, not the consumer side. And then your scene is actually just on the other side of that mirror being reflected back towards you with another mirror.
Yeah. I'd have to think about a way to put that. There's all these little things like that that are a lot of them are interesting sounding, and if they could be pulled off, great, because I've seen some of those used. John Allen famously used a mirror on his layout, and it was a good look from the photos. I mean, obviously none of us were there in person, so. But it was a great effect. He pulled it off to great effect, but he was some kind of a spectacular modeler. I mean, he was the modeler of a generation, and he pulled that off. So I don't have enough self-confidence to think I can pull off a quarter of the stuff that John Allen pulled off, and he did it in the day of analog rheostats, and he pulled it off back then. He lit buildings with photoactive paint. What is that? The photoactive paint and UV light or black light to create night scenes. So
yeah, Marty's being a smartass again.
Oh, he's trying to stir us up. He's turned up
Will Ralph be doing a clinic on 3D printed interiors decorated with pan pastels?
I saw it. I wasn't saying anything. I stirred the pot the other night, so I'm leaving it alone.
Sparky says a two-way mirror does not leave the gap that Ralph was talking about. That probably is true. It's a front face, but you can get a regular mirror that's quite inexpensive that's front loaded.
A two-way mirror?
A two-way mirror to me is one that is mirror on one side, and I can see through it on this side.
Exactly.
That's a two-way mirror. So I'm not sure what he means by two-way mirror. Maybe one mirror in front of the other, reflecting each other. That's fine.
Explain thyself, Sparky 107. Oh, a front silver mirror, not a two-way mirror. says.
Yeah, that's what Ralph was mentioning that a minute ago. You needed front silver. Not in every not in every case, but you'd have to hide the edges pretty good if it's not a front silvered.
Like if you were doing a road going off on an angle, to your backdrop, and you put a mirror there to make it look like it's going to continue. If it's mirrored on the back, the road is going to do a jog in the glass. But if it's silvered on the front, it just continues.
Angle always seems to be a problem.
On the Brooklyn, on the Dean Street, what is it, Dean Street? No, that's the Dean Street Lumber Company. I get my streets mixed up. The Warren Street Power Company, the backdrop that I bought, it has a big opening gate, slide paint, picture, photo. So what I did as an experiment was I cut that door out, that roll-up gate type thing.
Oh, yeah.
I cut it out, and I got a mirror and I placed it in there. And now when I park the coal train, in there, it reflects and makes it look like this. Instead of 3 or 2 cars, it's 4 cars. It's an extent.
Right.
And the beauty of it is that you don't look straight. You don't look straight down, or you look at an angle, so you really can't see whether or not there really is a mirror, because I have it flush and stuff like that. So in that instant, it worked.
It worked.
It was a good
When it
thing.
works, it's great. When it works, it's
can
great.
You guys hear me? Because I didn't have my microphone.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah. I'm on this technology, I tell you. We gotta thank John for this microphone. John gave me Yeah, see, E, J, and E, Jeff, two-way mirrors only work if the room you're viewing from is darker than the reflecting side.
Yeah.
And the plot thickens. Show of hands, how many people out there have fun on their model railroad?
Do what? Have fun with the modeling?
If it stops being fun, you guys aren't going to see me out here.
That includes the cussing and swearing.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, you're not having fun. If that doesn't happen.
No, absolutely. I agree with you. Right now, I'm in the process of changing out the tracks. I just put a video up tonight on it, and I had to cut back all the way into the yard. And, it was something I didn't want to do. But, yeah, I have to tell you, I'm having a blast doing it. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to cost me a lot of money. But you know what? I'm having fun. It's very therapeutic. It's very therapeutical. I have to say that. It is very therapeutic. I go in there, and I tell you, it's just good. Come out with life's answers. I after I work on the layout, I can come out. I think I can solve world peace.
There you go.
I honestly believe that once I come out of the layout, I think if I went to Washington, I could get the government to get that wall built and get the government to shut down the government.
It's either that or leave the world in pieces.
Well, one or the other. It's still nothing ventured, nothing gained. But that's how therapeutical it is. It really, truly is. And I do it, and Indian Head Valley Railroad says he does it for fun, and I do too. I think this is the greatest hobby in the world. I think we meet the best people in the world, talk to sometimes the strangest people in the world. But you know what?
Unique.
The best thing about this is we're all getting out of the basement. And
I'm in the basement.
I'm
in the basement.
I'm in my basement.
But think about it. You guys would be secluded in the basement and not talking on the video. Here we're having an interreaction, so we're in the basement. We're not in the basement, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
I have no friends.
You guys out there
I got it.
I'm all over the
And
place.
look at the age ranges too.
Martin says I'm getting to sound like Ken Patterson. No, I'm not. Am I really?
No.
I don't have a jacket that fits me.
He doesn't
You're not smoking enough weed.
Yes.
He doesn't have as good a mic as Bill does.
No, that's right.
That's
baby.
true.
Yeah.
He has that big thing in front of him that he's always touching.
And our Drake Cup, Drake's Cup. You know, we spend no expense here at YouTube Model Building.
Right.
I think I won this in a raffle, didn't I, John? You were raffling these off. Well, the raffle was $100. I was the only one that got into it.
Yeah.
My friend.
I'm glad you feel good about that deal, then. So, the modelers are great people. I think Lionel nailed that. Lionel Strang. That's the reason he started a Modelers Live show. It focuses a lot on the modelers as much as the models that they build, because most of the modelers that I meet are a creative bunch of fellows from a wide gamut of, background.
You obviously didn't listen to the show that Bill did when he interviewed Lionel. Lionel said he started it. He started the AML network because he liked the sound of his own voice.
He did say that. I've heard that. Say that. I'm sure that's true. I can't stand the sound of my own voice, but
I don't like it either.
Well, that's not very nice to say.
No, that's not. I meant that I don't like my own voice.
I didn't mean it that way. What I meant to say was that your voice is,
Your voice is lovely.
Most people don't like their own.
I tell you though, this is a good forum. I think that guys coming in and out and meeting new and different people. Look, we see everybody from all over the world.
Yep.
And stuff, and every once in a while we do get together and meet. So, pretty good, very good.
Yeah, last year several of us got to meet up with Marty and his wife last year in KC.
And he's still even talking to us after that, so I consider it a win.
No, we're still talking to him.
Either way.
We've had several days where we met together first. And me and Bill were talking about that earlier today. The times that we've got a chance to meet, several of us went to the Five Scale show, the Amherst show, Ralph, Big Bill, several of us were at that one. Show, that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, Wilmer says.
Yeah, I was just going to go. You go.
Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. It says Johnny's Train Talk Show.
Sounding like Chip and Dale.
Yeah. Wilmer says we know who's talking when Andy talks.
Yeah.
Wilmer, you trying to say Andy's like E.F. Hutton?
When Andy talks, everybody listens. We love you.
I can't.
We love Andy. We love you like a brother. Not necessarily our brother, but we love you like a brother.
Martin, you got that wrong. Martin says, "Did you see the latest news? The flat Earth from the flat Earth people. Australia does not exist."
Yeah.
And all the Aussies work for NASA. Well, I heard it was Australia is on the other side of the world. That's flat Earth, but there's another side to it.
The bottom side.
Yeah.
No, there's not a bottom side.
There's a whole group of that. I just heard this today for the first time. There's a whole group of that sect that the flat earthers have said, these guys are too crazy for us. The guys that space does not exist group. And the flat earthers said, no, man, those guys are off their rocker. It's too far out there.
Flat Earth Society,
they got to get over themselves.
Their slogan is, we're not crazy. If your slogan is, we're not crazy, you're probably crazy.
Or close to it.
Yeah. I actually know somebody who is a flat earther. Actually, and that's the end of the third quarter, ladies and gentlemen. The Knicks are up. And the Knicks are
time out.
I got family members that say that the contrails are chemicals being sprayed out.
Oh yes.
I almost beat her to death.
Yes.
My niece. You know, like really?
Yeah, contrails. But I know somebody who's a flat earther, and I always when he starts these conversations, I said, okay, let me ask you a question. If there's such a thing as flat Earth, you're saying that there's mountains, ice mountains around the Earth. He goes, yeah. I said, how come no one's ever spent money to go over those mountains and to see what's on the other side? How come? How come? How come? I've never heard anybody do it. Why?
They go to the top of Everest. They go to the bottom of the deepest spots of the ocean. We go everywhere. And there's plastic in all of those places. It's absurd. Those things are absurd. But some of those things don't bother me too bad because they're effectively harmless. It's the anti-vaxxers that's a problem. That's harmful. That's a dangerous myth that was refuted.
Okay.
Marty said we're not at the end of the earth, but you can see it from here.
Yeah. I believe it. Yeah.
I've heard that.
What about that guy that shot himself up into the stratosphere on the steam-powered rocket? Anybody heard anything from him lately? The flat Earth?
He's not in the Flat Earth Society anymore.
Yeah.
He didn't get high enough.
I'm a rockin' man.
Well, supposedly he got high enough to see the curve. That was the problem. So basically his whole theory was blown to
Smithereens?
It's a round flat disc. He saw the edge of the disc.
Yeah. We're on a hemispherical shape, but we're not a ball.
No, just a round flat disc. That's why he saw the curve.
Yeah, those folks are harmless, though. Ill-informed, but harmless.
Well, you know, everybody's got to have a window licker. You know,
Someone had to come. Someone had to get here on a short bus.
yeah.
My history teacher, he said there's a big difference between ignorance and stupidity. If there's a tiger running at you and you're in the desert and there's a gun at your feet, you pick the gun up and you hit the tiger on the head with it and the tiger eats you. And you didn't know how to use the gun, that is ignorance. And if you're in the desert and a tiger's running at you, you pick up the gun, you hit it on the head, it eats you, and you knew how to use the gun, that's stupidity.
I like that. That's a good
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also the old saying is ignorance is not knowing how to do something. Stupidity is doing something over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yep.
That's called insanity.
That's insanity. Yeah.
That's what Einstein said, I think.
Well,
And there's always enough. There's the other one too. There's one that, caution: do not back up. Severe tire damage. That's one of my favorites. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I just threw that in there.
Insanity is building your layout the same way each time. And
Isn't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Let's see. Let me come up with a plan. Oh, the same one. What's that one?
I didn't change the house anyway. It's still got the same measurements. I can only fit it this way. It's like, well,
I think I could probably. I would have learned in a few years. I would make several changes if I did it all over again. None of them massive enough to tear it out, but I would make some changes.
2020 is hindsight, Andrew. I'd do the same thing if I were going to do this layout again. First thing I would do is electric. I would do the lights and fans. I would put two ceiling fans in, and the lighting system design. And I didn't because I was impatient. If I had to do it over again after I'd done that, I would have left it a prairie plywood, and I would have ran trains for almost a year and a half until I put scenery down. I would have not put that scenery down so fast. I would have just ran the trains until I worked the kinks out on the running of the rails. But so be it. It is what it is. I got what I got. I'm loving it. And Jerry Smith, what you're talking about has nothing to do with model railroading. You're absolutely correct, Jerry, and we do apologize for that. We did get off the rail. I mean that metaphorically. And
We're back.
But we're back. We're back.
Back in business.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we've already reached the 1 hour mark, so.
Well, this is just extra.
No, but Jerry was correct. We did get off the mark a little bit. And, that's not what we're here for. So we do apologize, Jerry, for that.
So you touched on it. You getting everything running properly, and then do the scenery.
Yeah.
What ends up happening, and I agree with that. Getting all your track work done, and when you start doing scenery, don't get all the white stuff done and then go back and put color to it. Do a 3 foot section at a time.
Yeah.
Because seeing that white jungle there is going to discourage you like no end.
Yeah.
I think it depends on what your goal is.
Depends on what?
I think it depends on what your goal is. I could not have done all my track work, done no scenery. It's not possible. It wouldn't have been possible. Not given the goal that I had for it, because the scenery is the controlling element of the layout. I can manipulate the track plan. I did. As scenery has changed, I moved. The town was supposed to be on this wall, I moved it to that wall because of scenic elements. So I built the scenery.
You're Andy. You're Andy, and you do all the stuff your way anyway.
What's wrong with the way God built the earth? Scenery came first, the railroads came second. Why is it we have to decide that the railroad comes first and then the scenery? Do it the other way.
No, I have to strongly disagree with that. You cannot do the scenery first, then lay the track. You have to have a plan prior to any kind of construction or infrastructure that you're building. And then what you do is you put around it, you build it to the specs that you have, and then around it you scenic it to what, first and foremost is sitting and planning it, deciding what area you want to do, how you want to do it, what kind of equipment you want to run. Then once you've established that, then you get the track plan and then lay the track. I think that what Ralph and I are saying is that had I had my druthers, I would have went with the laid the track and played with trains, and then I would have went about building. Like, one of the things, I would have absolutely built the bridges to span the river, and then I would have taken my time with the other stuff of the other buildings and the scenery, and just worked it in section by section, staging yard. Spend time on the staging yard, no matter how long it took me. But I think I would have waited at least a year.
Some of it you're doing at the same time.
What's that?
Some of it you're doing the scenery at the same time, because you're roughing in your rivers, because you got to put your bridges in. You're roughing in your hills, because you're putting your mountains in. So you're doing some scenery while you're doing your track work.
He was suggesting, Big Bill said he would, and a lot of people subscribe to that philosophy, and I don't disagree with it. I think it's a great philosophy if the goal is operations first. The track and track plan, how well it operates, whether it operates correctly, whether it has the right, and if you're modeling something that is fictitious or freelanced, then by all means, laying the track makes the absolute most sense. I was working with a prototype, so I know exactly what the track plan is. It's exactly the way the Norfolk and Western engineers designed it. I don't have to rethink that. What I've got to do is try to fit it in my space. And the controlling factor to fitting it in my space is where the scenery allows it to fit. Now, granted, my road bed is in before I lay the track, but because my track is so time-consuming to build at 2 or 3 hours per foot, then I don't want to build a track that I have to modify road bed for, because I've had to modify road bed many, many times. I also don't think that's applicable for every railroad. I just think this one-size-fits-all fast rule that there's only one way to build a railroad.
Nobody's saying there's one way to build it. There's no hard, fast rules.
No, that's right.
That's
all I want
to. If you get distracted by things as you're building, that's your problem. But you want bulletproof track to start with.
Yeah.
So you obviously have to work from a plan. Once you've got your plan set out, you do your track, you make sure it is impeccable. And then you start doing scenery. But some guys will start doing scenery at one end, and go all the way to the other end before adding any color to it, or any trees, or any rocks, right? So now you have this white jungle.
White desert.
And that, yeah, and that's what's, it's like looking at a plywood layout.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I like the idea that much as I've done mine at one end. Now all the pink foam is covered, but at one end there was no modules. There was no bench work as there would be in my case, styrofoam bench work, but there was nothing. There was just a few modules. I had some track work done here, and I could run a train back and forth for a short distance. And I put that video on YouTube, and I was doing scenery over here, and I slowly started. I was working at different things, and at that time I could walk in and do anything related to the railroad. I could work on a module. I could lay track. At this point, I've got all the modules built and all the road bed done, and I still have some track work to contend with, some turnouts to build because they're massively time consuming. Probably 24 to probably 20 to 30, somewhere in the 20 to 30 hours of turnout to build them.
I like Michael Connolly's comment. Build the scenery first, then dynamite out the right-of-ways.
I mean, I think you need a plan. I just think the goal is the control. I'm a believer that the goal is the controlling factor.
Andy, that was a joke. You can laugh.
Oh, I know. I like the joke of it. I like the joke of it.
Go get an controlled bulldozer and start plowing the tree.
So that's why we love you, Andy, because you get so passionate about it, and you get, No, it's just he gets passionate and he wants to drive that thought home, and that's the best thing, man. That's what I love about you, bro.
I don't get distracted. No, that's
when it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, I got finals tomorrow.
Sam, get out of here. Go.
1 o'clock.
What do you mean it's 1 o'clock in the morning?
No,
Where do you
I meant
live?
like it's not, but like I'm saying, like next time it'll be like that happened once. I mean, we were talking about
just once.
Yeah.
Sam,
that's 3 nights a week on my best night.
Well, give us your email. We'll send you a note to the teachers.
Yeah.
Dear Sam Cool's teachers, please excuse Sam because he was up late last night talking about model railroading, and he's overstayed, not going to sleep. So please excuse him for taking a nap. That should work, right?
Yeah, that'll definitely work.
Okay.
Well, when you go
my wife's the teacher here. She said that won't work. She just said.
I think.
Alright, I'm getting a bad echo from somebody.
Because we're all talking at once.
Yeah.
White Northern. All right, everybody. Go ahead, John.
Me?
No. John,
No, not you.
Johnny Rep.
What? I'll give y'all 5 minutes to finish your discussion. We're already over.
Yeah, I was going to say have a good finals. Do good on your finals.
Thank you.
I'm lucky I just got mine done yesterday. I had off 2 days.
Ralph, Dave Piper asked, so Ralph, if the area you are modeling is south facing, would you reverse the town locations on the map or reverse the direction? East equals left, west equals right.
Okay, I'm not a prototyper.
Right.
I like operations, so all of my layout is out of here. Right? It's out of my head. And the areas that I model are water, mountains, and everything in between.
Right.
So if I have an industry that I think is the wrong way, I'll turn it around. I want it to be accessible, and I also want it to look good.
Good. Okay.
I just think that there's just no one-size-fits-all strategy for how to go about doing it, and the goal has to be the driving force. What kind of layout you're building is the driving force. If operations is nearly maybe not 100%, but very nearly your singular goal. It's a spectrum. If operations is the 85% goal, 90% goal, you will sacrifice cosmetics and scale and proportions and all kinds of stuff because operations, the role-playing game portion, is the defining criteria of your layout. Then by all means, all bets are off. Building all the track work, operating the thing is probably the way to do that because operations is the most critical factor. If the cosmetics is the critical factor, then laying all the track and just running trains on it is absolutely not going to end you up with a railroad where the cosmetics meet your goal. And I'm trying to weave this line in the middle. So while I absolutely have a plan, if I at least rough in scenery before I commit the track work to being a certain way, I can adapt that track work to match where the scenery meets the viewing angles, perspectives, and goal that I'm attaining to. So my goal forces the pathway to build my railroad that it does. And that pathway is not traditional. And probably not for everyone. And I would not I would not tell anybody building their first layout to do that. Building your first layout, maybe even your second, especially if you're building chainsaw layouts. Absolutely lay the track and run train. Don't even think about anything else till you do that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. If you're a few layouts in, you can start switching it down.
And Michael Conley says it the best, as Tony Custis once said. It's good enough.
Yeah, good enough. So now, Bill, there's a question to ask him. Andy, that is. Why hasn't he started his helix? Because he wants to stick to prototype. He has a problem with the way the rails come off the top of the helix.
I figured it out.
Instead of turning it around and going the other direction and come off nice and smooth, he has to stick to prototype.
Yeah, I can't. It's too. I've operated on railroads that made that compromise. It is too complicated when you're standing in front of the track work and somebody says you have a westbound train coming. It's too complicated to try to figure out where on the railroad you are to figure out what westbound means. It has to be that wherever you are on the railroad, when you're standing looking at the track work in front of you, westbound always must be to your left. Otherwise, it requires too much experience with the railroad to enjoy operating it. That's not a controlling factor. It would not be a problem on a railroad that was CTC operated. That wouldn't be a problem. But on a timetable and train order style layout, knowing where east and west is critically important to the decision process, because if you mess that up, it's going to be a big deal. Things will start falling apart. The pieces will fall apart. The Monopoly board is getting flipped over, and the game's not much fun to play if everybody's not working towards similar goals. And knowing where you are and not going backwards on the Monopoly board is important.
So it's like putting in an overpass or whatever. You realize that going up half and going down half gives you the same as if you went up full height.
Sure.
Or down full height. So you can do that with your helix, but it's your rail.
I am making compromises, but and if I could not figure out a way to do it, if I just could not figure out a way to do it, I would make the compromises. There's no question I would make the compromises, but I don't have to.
Ding, ding.
We got it on video now.
All right, 5 minutes is up.
Thank you, John.
Comments are in. All right, we're going to wind this one down. Let it run over a little bit. I got a little interest in there towards the end. Once I got back on track. Anyway, next week we have got January 16th, which will be Joe's train room. And on the 23rd, we got Who's Big Bill talking to. Yeah.
Even he doesn't know.
Huh?
Even he doesn't know.
I hope so.
Of course I know. The 23rd, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now I know. I got to get a guess. Oh, I have a guess.
Don't forget the Tuesday, Wednesday shows are at 9 o'clock Eastern, Thursday shows are at 10 o'clock Eastern. Excuse me. With that said, hope everybody has a good weekend. We shall see you on the 16th for Joe's Train Room. Y'all have a good one. We shall see you later.